focused on our mission, et cetera. So my vision for Podcast Town is to help podcasters get better at podcasting, grow their audience, and make more money, if that's what they desire. So it really just comes from a place of wanting to add value. I'm a self-proclaimed podcast evangelist. I want to see the medium move forward because it's so powerful. You talk about developing your voice and the relationships that you build. So it's a extremely powerful medium, and I want as many people as humanly possible to take advantage of it and benefit from it.
Got it. So there's a part of that that's very like niche for, hey, podcasts, I know podcasts, but not everybody out there is a podcaster, and maybe not everybody can be. But I was, as you were talking, I was drawing all these lines between that applies to podcasts and job hunting, and this applies to this, and all these dots connected. So from what I kind of distilled out of that, Elzie, from hearing you go on that down that great path, there is that you need to maybe find a mentor. If you're in the job market or whatever you're doing, whatever you're trying to better yourself on and kind of beat imposter syndrome on, you got to find somebody who's kind of going to give you the right moves to do so. Is that correct?
Absolutely. I think you look at guys like, I have a Giannis bobblehead here on my desk.
Oh yeah, he's great. He's such a great guy.
He is such a great guy. But I remember when he was first drafted, he was 17, 18 years old.
A kid.
He was skinny. He had the fire. He had the passion. He had the desire. But it was the coaching, right? It was the coaching. It was the direction. It was the instruction that made him and is making him what he is today. You don't get from where he was to where he is now without coaching, without that outside perspective saying, hey, Giannis, you need to get in the weight room and lift, or have you checked out this move? And if you implemented this into your game, this will take you to the next level. So you're absolutely right. Whether it's a podcast or whether it's bettering yourself professionally, finding a job, your relationships, the people who can pour into you, who can tell you about opportunities, and help you identify those blind spots. We all have them, right? It might be how you're presenting. It may be how your speech. It might be your mindset. So having a coach and people in your corner who can kind of help you identify those blind spots, invaluable.
Got it. All right. So slight gear shift here, Elzie. How do you tackle imposter syndrome for yourself?
Okay, that's a great question, and I'm going to give you the deepest answer that I can pull out of my soul, my being. Are you ready, Rob?
Go.
Here it is. People listening, get closer to your speakers. This is going to be deep.
I'm here, man.
I just do it. It's really that simple. I just do it. When I was launching Podcast Town, it was like, okay, why would people listen to me? Why would they join the community? Why would they participate and engage? So I just did it. Because I feel strongly that if you are in alignment with your values, you stay true to who you are, and you are your authentic self, good things are going to happen. But you're going to make mistakes. There are going to be things that you do and you look at 3, 4, 7 years from now and say, okay, I should have probably done that different.
Hopefully you don't cringe too hard, right?
but I've had a mentor once tell me that if you do whatever, it could be releasing a project, it could be a product, it could be a podcast, and you listen to it years later and you don't cringe at the first one, you waited too long. And I take that to heart, and I take that advice. There are things that I could have done with Podcast Town even, but I didn't. I just got it out there. I got people who I felt identified with what we were trying to do and would get value out of it, and we're making it better every day. So I think how you get over it is you just do it. You again, you realize that you're extremely powerful. But you approach it with as much humility as you can. I call it the dichotomy of the human existence, because on one hand, you are the only Rob, on the face of the planet that has ever been, ever is, and ever will be. That's pretty special.
It is, but there are also some
unique.
people I know who'd say that's the way it should be. And thank God. But no,
But on the other
to
hand,
not make fun of that, no, you're absolutely correct.
You're just like everybody else. So there's this balance between understanding that you are the most unique thing, creation on the face of this planet, but yet you're still like everybody else. So I think when you embrace that concept, it's easier to move ahead and not have that imposter syndrome, because you realize that what you bring to the table is invaluable, but at the same time, you're dealing with people that are sharing that experience.
That was okay. That was incredibly deep. That was awesome. Elzie, that's why you're here. Thank you. That was. I've heard actually that same thing almost said. Gary Vaynerchuk said that a number of years ago. You've won the lottery of the universe. It's 1 in 400 billion, I think. That you're a human being on this planet right now.
Yep.
And
pretty special.
Yeah, and you're not fired up about it, I think is what he says. You're not pumped. So I think that's a great segue, and actually it moves right on into the next question here. Is that in your mind, Elzie? There's got to be some reality to imposter syndrome, because I know in my mind, I think it's like you don't want to listen to that negative voice because it's just tearing you down. But at the same time, sometimes it's right. You know what I mean? And to go back to Gary Vee, he says in one of my favorite of his videos, he goes, "Some of you suck." And that's very plain. So in your mind, when is it okay to suck? Whether it's at your job or maybe at something that's just a hobby.
Yeah. I think going back to your point, it's definitely real. I embrace it. Because I think even when you look at, when people criticize or are critical, sometimes they're right.
Yeah.
And being open to that, I think, is an advantage. Because when those negative thoughts come, I actually invite them to have a seat at the table. Let's talk about those things. Why don't you think that's going to work? Because I think, and I don't have that conversation out loud with myself, just so you know,
Sure.
I am normal that way, but I invited to the table. I made the proclamation that we wanted to get to 30K members. Is that possible? Maybe, maybe not. But the only way to find out is to try. So those negative thoughts come. It's like, well, what makes you think that you're going to do this over? And to your point, maybe it's right. But the wonderful thing about life, business, otherwise, is what if it's not right? What if it's wrong? Right? What if I can do it? What if we can do it? So I think I invite those negative thoughts. Let's have a conversation. And again, to your point, sometimes they're right. But even when they're right, they're not right 100% of the time forever. So they might be right on Monday, but Friday's a different ballgame. Every single day is a brand new opportunity to prove that negative thought wrong. And to the point of that Gary Vee makes is we're dying even as we speak. And so how much time do you want to lend to those to that imposter syndrome before you understand that it's a numbers game, right? If I take 10 shots at the basket, I might suck at first, but if you take those the negative outcomes, you analyze them, you embrace them, learn from them, you're going to get better. It is just a matter of how are you looking at the mistakes? How are you looking at the things that you thought would go one way but went a different way? And how are you incorporating those into your strategy? So I think sometimes they are right, but they're not right forever.
Man, there are so many good sound bites out of this already. That's what I love about episodes like this. Really some great and deep thoughts there, Elzie. I really like how you turned that on its head, which is just outstanding. So, next question. Moving more into the job realm. What are some strategies when pursuing something new that a job seeker could take and make their own help kind of ease up on that imposter feeling?
Yeah, I think just being really good at what you do. And I understand what you're saying with what if it's true that you suck?
Yeah.
But everything is relative, right? I've worked with so I have an engineering background.
Mm-hmm.
I've worked with great engineers. I've worked with not so great engineers. And ironically, it was the not so great engineers that they didn't think that they were not so great. They sucked, but you couldn't tell them that. So I think perception, perspective, mindset is super important because what you think is bad or a poor performance might be exceptional to somebody else. So I think it's important to understand that alignment with timing, skill set, mindset are almost more important than whether you're good or not. I don't know if that makes sense, but in other words, that same engineer that was not so good might be a rock star in a culture that emphasizes their strengths. But if I'm really good with, for example, being analytical, and I'm in a culture where being thrives on spontaneity, I'm probably not going to be a good fit there. So they might look at it and say, well, he's not good. But it's not that he or she is not good. It's just that they don't fit. So I think finding the right culture fit is almost as important as the skill set itself.
Interesting, because I've actually seen that be said by a number of companies, like, we hire for attitude, not for aptitude, I think.
Yep.
And that's something that for somebody like myself, if you'd asked me that like 2 or 3 years ago, I would have told you were totally full of it. Because, I mean, you got to be able to do your job. But if you are pushing yourself in a culture that isn't going to let you succeed anyway, I think that it's not going to happen no matter how good you are at your job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it'll actually hurt you. I've been in environments where the things that make me who I am were opposite of what that culture was. Being studious, being meticulous, just didn't fit in the culture. Wasn't anything wrong necessarily with the organization. Nothing wrong with me, just not a good fit.
Gotcha, because you're moving at different rates than they are. That's at least always the way I describe it, is that the machine is moving at one speed and you're a gear that's moving at a different speed. Mm-hmm. So, got it. All right. Now this was the question that I put in here that I really wanted you to answer because of not only you transitioning out of being an engineer and all that education we've talked about that you've gotten.
Yep.
So sometimes we see folks that have, either a lack of knowledge, whether it's a result of an education gap or a skill gap. And I'm really curious, Elzie, what is your opinion on reinvesting in long-term education, maybe formal as well, for yourself as a person when it comes to an atmosphere like now? Obviously, there are people who are, kind of hurting for jobs and things like that, and maybe don't quite know where, next month's mortgage is coming from or their rent or things like that. I'm really curious as to what you as somebody who have reskilled yourself by launching your own platform have to say about somebody who may want to invest in themselves but might have actually a hard time doing so.
That is a really great question. I would say building relationships is probably the key to success, no matter what it is. When you talk about a person that might be struggling right now financially, build relationships. Meet people via Zoom. Do whatever you can to add value to other people. And grow your network, because that's going to be the single thing that's going to determine your trajectory. In terms of education, it's a tough thing because right now, to your point, there's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot. We don't know what this looks like next year.
Right.
I hope, knock on wood, things turn around and are somewhat normal,